in a few simple steps. View the stylish and even maintenance-free possibilities. And get a free instant quote with the online estimating tool at empire-fence.com. Let Empire Fence protect your empire.
In Lincoln, we spell sports ESPN. 101.5 FM and 1480 AM.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it, weekend editions here at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Damon Barr is in. We are a week away, man, and it's feeling like, well, a chillier version of spring out this morning, but going to be a good weather weekend and ramping up. A few more practices for the Big Red, and then it will be the spring game showcase. Can join us today on Hail Varsity Radio Weekend. Numbers to get in: 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, Chris Schmidt at Mark Skurs for Mark Kraynak, and 2 R's for at Damon Barr. Can email Chris at HailVarsity.com. So we will have a rewind coming up in about 20 minutes or so with Barry Alvaraz. We had the legendary Badger on last week. We will dive in with Brandon Vogel and Gary Sharp next hour.
Hey, which bad coach or administrator does Barry recommend we hire now? Any personnel?
You're in that crowd in camp that think old Barry wanted the harm, dear old Nebraska.
He's like, oh, Billy Callahan, Cosgrove, oh yeah.
Here's the
Those
thing,
are good
though.
Ones.
Oh
yeah, Sean Eichhorst, oh yeah.
Let me say this.
Like
let me say this. Barry had both guys on his staff as a coach. And when they were building up to be going to Pasadena every year, Cos and Callahan were pretty vital members. I mean, you know how good the offensive lines were for Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, totally. And in hindsight, not terrible when he was here either, right?
Well, no, I mean,
Callahan was.
Right. I mean, if he had a defense, the offense was scoring a lot of points, right? I mean, That's the old downfall. As far as the I-course thing, I got nothing, and I don't think he has anything. We asked him about it 3 years ago. He's like, "Yeah, this didn't work out." I mean, the tone,
Sorry about that.
The tone said it all. I'll say this though, you know who his deputy AD was at Wisconsin when he kind of took over? We're juggling the head football coaching duties and the AD duties.
Lance?
No.
Who?
Jamie Pollard. That guy's been pretty good.
Oh, okay.
So, I think Barry knows who to hire, how to hire. And, he had 2 really bad outings against Mike Riley when Wisconsin played Oregon State. And he's like, damn, how did that happen? This guy can coach. Well, nobody did their homework, right? Nobody did their homework on Nebraska's part, saying, okay, what kind of leader is Sean Eichhorst? And Sean Eichhorst didn't do his homework on what type of coach is Mike Riley. And, oh, by the way, should we really get rid of the guy that was in front of him?
Then let's bring in the
answer is no.
The not so ballyhooed former GM of the Rams too.
Yeah. Just because his last name was cool doesn't mean.
Either way, I blame Barry for the downfall of Nebraska. There's really no other.
But see, you got to go back
person to point at.
There is. Yeah, there is. And he had a smile like he just sold you a car without 4 wheels.
Which, I blame Barry.
No.
I'm just kidding. I don't blame him.
It's all right. You can have those feelings. You're not alone in Nebraska to have those feelings.
I don't look. When Nebraska hires somebody that has ties to Barry and they call him and ask him, hey, what do you think about said person? And he responds with, I think this is a really good person, and they did this and they did that, and they're going to be good. Like, what do you expect him to say?
Right.
Honestly, like, do you honestly think when
he
you call
burns
him,
ants and tortures small ants? No, you mean
right.
You're not going to hammer the guy.
Yeah, like
there's a reason he ain't.
Like,
there's a reason he ain't working for me anymore. Or hey, this is who you should take because I want to get him the hell out of my situation.
Right.
I mean, you got to do your own work on that. Kraynak, let's hit some spring ball and have you assess this week. And I look at this week as a couple of different fronts. One, the positive being you're getting back and forth. It sounds like this spring with the offense having some moments, the defense having some moments. And the old dauber was down for the offense on Wednesday based on how things went, and defense won that day. And to me, that's good because all I've ever heard from people that were either coaching or playing in the heyday, and I'm not saying it's going to be the heyday this season, but you had a great yin and yang, give and take. You hear the wonderful phrase, iron sharpens iron. And if that's what's going on, if the lines of scrimmage are building one another up, that bodes well for Nebraska. And it teaches you about some resiliency if you get your butt handed to you one practice day. You always got to, because you're going to lose plays. You're going to lose series. You're going to lose quarters. You're going to lose games. You know, what's your response level like? So that's good. I'm still smiling that there is a spring to develop. And the other thing that I'm really intrigued on is, you know, who we're going to see a week from today. Now, last Saturday, we were all giddy about seeing this running back, Gabe Irvin. We didn't see him. He was in street clothes, and that was kind of deflating. Now, the story of the week has been Jock Yant, and he kind of turned some heads last Saturday because of his size and agility, and now he's been a topic all week just because, either Nebraska got a really good steal out of Tallahassee, or, dude, it's Thinsville because everyone else has not been able to be available enough to get reps. And you really want to see that running back room take pressure off of this offense and complement what you think can be a pretty good offensive line that, even though they're young, they've all had a lot of snaps as you try and work through this right guard spot, obviously. So that's been on my mind this week, and I think it'll be a pretty vanilla but feel-good spring game. Of course, the wide receivers turned some heads, and we were talking about this a bit yesterday, and our friend Mitch Sherman wrote about this, and he asked the question, and it's a great question, and I'd love your perspective on it when it comes to the Nebraska offense. Did you lose any amount of faith last football season in the Nebraska offense? And listen, long term, I don't believe that. I don't think the offense can get it done. I think they can. I think they've shown the ability to do some nice things. It's been about the consistency. What has baffled me is some of the play calling, and it's easy to go snot-nosed armchair after something doesn't work. So let me say that. I'm not a qualified football mind, clearly, when it comes to play calling and game planning. But there's just some game planning and for sure some execution, and above all, the turnover bug. I mean, that's what causes you pause on the offense a little bit. You've seen the defense continue to grow. I think the offense, with what they've done in upgrading some of the talent in the wide receiver room, that can help out the offense. I think they need to find 2 or 3 running backs to lean on, and I feel good about Adrian. The thing that's unknown is his health as far as making it through an entire season at a high level where he's not dinged up, and I think he's been dinged up a lot in his career. So those are all things that need to break the right way for Nebraska next year with a pretty good schedule. Some early Vegas odds are out. Nebraska's favored in 6. They're dogged in 5, and they're a pick'em against Michigan. So, I mean, a lot of weights, and it kind of kicks things off or is part of this continued process here next Saturday.
Yeah, it's funny. The question about did you lose faith in the offense? Like, yes, because it was an offense that looked pretty rudderless, that didn't really know what it wanted to be or how it wanted to do it, and lacked weapons. That just flat out lacked weapons that were reliable. But as much faith as you lost in the offense, I think I gained in the defense. Right? Because that was the first year where it's like, for the most part, those guys are dialed in and they're shutting it down. Like they, a majority of the games, they shut down the offense. The defense was able to do that. However, the offensive personnel situation has changed so drastically coming into this year that you can't, I can't say that I have all the faith in the world. It's sort of like crypto investing.
Sure.
Like you look at it and you're like, wow, those could be some really big highs. That Bitcoin could rise to $400 trillion, but you could also lose your
Mm-hmm.
You're just not, you see potential. You think there's something there, but you don't want to go all in. You'd be crazy to go all in just based on what you've seen. But you might want to put in a little bit.
Yeah.
It's okay to put in like $100 or something. Just see if that turns into something. Because, look, there was no Toure. There was no Manning. Is he going to play? Who knows? Fedoni, there's rumors he got hurt. Who knows?
Yeah, we were going to delicately just rip that Band-Aid off.
Rumors. Yeah, but who knows? Running back, don't really know what's happening there. But Martinez coming back for a 4th year. Look, your offensive line is massive. If nothing else, I just find it hard to believe, put it this way, if you have this crazy, massive offensive line, that does not mean that they're going to be the best offensive line. Bigger isn't always better. But I'm trying to think of the last time I saw an offensive line that size that wasn't at least good. Right? Like they should be at least good. If the coaching is okay, mm-hmm. They should be at least good. I just can't imagine that there'll be a liability. Right? Plus a 4-year starting quarterback, plus these new weapons. So there is reason to believe that the offense will improve. There is definite reason to believe that the defense will improve. There is reason to believe special teams will improve. I mean, really, all 3 phases, there is reason to believe they will all get better. Shouldn't those add up to a better team and better results? And maybe a better question, is there reason to believe that the offense will go backwards? Is there reason to believe that the defense will go backwards? Or that special teams will get worse? No,
I don't believe that.
I can't see either of those situations.
I don't believe the offense will get worse. I don't believe the defense will get worse. Because what's the old coaching saying? You're either getting better or you're getting worse. You never stay the same. And I don't believe the special teams can be worse. And that kind of goes back into when we're talking about the offense, the run game. Did you lose faith at all? God, I mean, I went through a couple of those ball games that were just heart-wrenching. There's 3 games last year that were coin flips, more than 3. But there's 3 that Nebraska was down, took a lead, and then did nothing. That's the Iowa game. That's the Northwestern game. That's the Minnesota game. You know how the Iowa game started out? They're down 10-0. Go to lead and go to halftime with the lead. Minnesota jumped out on them 10-0. Nebraska ended up leading the ball game 14-10 at some point. Had a chance to tie for a field goal, I believe, in the 3rd quarter. And then you have, I said Iowa, I said Minnesota. Then I look at the Northwestern game where you got a guy like Miles Farmer. Hey, bro, welcome to college football. What's he do? The guy picks off 2 in the first half and sets your offense up where you're down again to Northwestern to start the game. You come back, you're up by a score, right? And you score all of your points, in that second quarter. It was set up by your defense. And then you do nothing the rest of the game. Again, Northwestern's defense was insane last year. And those are 3 games that, okay, so you don't sweep them, but hell, you could have gone 2-1, especially with Minnesota, man, with 33 guys out. And what was your game plan that week? Well, it was to come out and throw the damn football, and Minnesota's allowing 7 a game. And that speaks to, A, trust on the offensive line, B, what's your availability of anyone running the football beyond Wandale, and Mills was still nursing things, or it's your quarterback, right? And then the Iowa game, I mean, it's a special teams misstep that is a score in that phase of the ball game, and you lose 26-20, a 1-score game. So is choppy as it's been on all 3 sides of all 3 phases of the game for Nebraska at times. Man, if they get 1 fixed or 2/3 of them fixed, you're thinking things could be better. There's got to be better decision making, but the turnovers, man, that's just what's been really killer as well. Dolman did some research, and he's like, Nebraska's fumbled 77 times.
When? And how long?
I think since Frost has been here.
Jeez.
And, I mean, they fumbled 77 times. I think they've lost 32 of them.
Wow.
I mean, and the way he put it, he's like, think about how many snaps you get a ball game. You get it between 70 and 80. So that's one entire game of just fumbling the ball every play.
Yeah, wow. That's absurd.
You're pissed, clearly, because you just broke something.
Yeah, something happened back there.
What was that?
That wasn't me. I don't know.
Was it your pup?
Let me check. Tanner, you all right? Apparently everything's okay. Don't touch anything sharp. Yeah, I'll go handle that in a little bit when we go to break.
You've got to really you got to keep the bottles of vodka away from the edge of the shelf.
I mean, that's how you're supposed to start the day.
The bloody buddy. Well,
that's great.
That was shocking, and usually that's a well placed sound effect, but no.
Was that the prospects of Nebraska's football future?
I don't know, or that's
breaking,
or breaking through the glass ceiling.
I don't. Well, that's true too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's been like this for a while though. There's always like a bugaboo of some sort that you got to get over. And honestly, turnovers has been one of those things for a long freaking time. Now, Mike Riley did sort of stem the fumbling thing. I think it was in his last year.
Well, you didn't have a quarterback running. You had Tommy Armstrong running around a little bit, but you didn't really have a quarterback running as much, clearly.
Yeah, and I think it was in his last year. They only fumbled like 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. So it just was not a thing that they did. They also didn't run the ball hardly ever. But think about that. 77? What? So that's 77 plays where you're essentially just like the play is just a free-for-all. You might keep the ball. The other team might. Who knows? We'll see. Like that's entirely too many. That feels preventable. Feels very preventable. Yeah. Look, and that's why you have to temper any of your expectations because of crap like that. Right? I mean, you got Adrian, he's got all the measurables, going into his 4th year, can make some spectacular plays, but fumbles too much, throws too many picks. Right? You can bring up Manning and Toure, like they got the quintessential NFL size, haven't played a single snap hardly in Division 1A football, let alone made a catch and contributed or done anything. Right? So you have to temper that. Running back, you have like 6, 7 options. Only 2 of them are actually healthy right now to participate. Offensive line, those guys are just absolutely massive. You have an enormous offensive line, but you got a bunch of untested folks at guard. Mm-hmm. And even the ones that are tested at tackle are going into their 2nd year playing. So
or second career start.
Right. Yeah. Well, totally. And that's so there's not it's not a situation where it's just like take it to the bank. There's very little of that on the team, especially offensively. Defensively, I think it's a little bit different. I think you can take to the bank that the secondary is legit.
Agree.
Secondary is legit. I think you can take to the bank that Doman is legit. I think you can take to the bank that the defensive line as a group gives you enough. Absolutely, because you have enough bodies and you can just rotate guys in and out, and I think they can be a problem.
You know what's nice? Back to your point on the defensive line, you've clearly got separation between the Rodgers and Robinsons of the world and Daniels, okay? But you know how nice it is for Nebraska to have freaking depth and bring people in, and to your point about rotation, and think about being able to rotate and keep guys fresh and keep the sledgehammer swinging against a run offense in the Big Ten in October and November, assuming everyone stays healthy. That's so huge for Nebraska. I mean, it's so important for the Huskers to have the ability to be as big and as strong and as physical as their counterparts, finally again on the line of scrimmage, thanks to Duval and company. And then, by the way, they've developed guys behind where your gap or drop-off isn't brutal, okay? So you just go in there and it's going to be 2nd and 8 for somebody, not 2nd and 3, ideally anyway. So, no, that's like my biggest comfort on defense. And you mentioned Doman, you mentioned the secondary, who's your going to lead the way for you emotionally and physically. But the defensive line in the Big Ten is such an asset for Nebraska. That'll be your difference maker, Kraynak, this season. And it was a difference maker for you last year, aside from the Illinois game.
Especially if you decide, and jury's still out there, are you still going to try to go fast offensively? Are you going to try to go fast and end up going 3 and out, which puts more pressure on your defense, has them on the field a lot longer? If that's the case, and you can rotate, I mean, the reason why you don't want to do that, why you don't want to put your defense in that situation, is because you tire out your defense. Well, so if you're able to then go to the bench, bring in fresh bodies the whole time, you're not going to tire out. Gives yourself a better chance to win.
And the last bow on this is special teams. Go count how many go-ahead drives teams had against Nebraska last year, and I don't have the answer. I just know what happened. And that's, again, looking at those 3 ball games last year that were the coin flips that you didn't get done. Iowa, Northwestern, Minnesota. And look at the go-ahead drive for Minnesota. Look at the go-ahead drive for Northwestern. Go look at the go-ahead drive for Iowa. We're talking a 40 to 55-yard field to drive because your special teams were a nightmare. You had a short-ass field.
Yeah.
You had a short field for that defense that was back on the field because your offense went 3 and out again.
Yeah, dude, it's time. It's time. No more excuses. Just, year 4. The people that have been here a long time and have lasted and have not transferred have been through now 4 years of what I still believe is a great strength and conditioning and nutrition program. That should start to bear fruit. It just needs to. After 4 years, it has to. Well, and then I think and there's not another. I can't think of a position where you are so void of talent. I don't think you're dealing with that either. No. You don't have some glaring hole that is some other staff's fault or some crazy unfortunate set of circumstances. Like, you don't have that either.
No, what you have right now is you're fixing your missteps from what you thought the league was and what you needed body type wise. That's what you're fixing now in year 4. The mistakes and missteps transitioning from where you were at to the Big Ten, to what the job is versus what you thought the job was, personnel-wise. And that's okay. Everyone's got to adjust.
Yep.
Kraynak will let you clean up the broken glass.
Yeah, go see what that's all about.
Pour another.
Right.
And we'll rewind here in a moment with Barry Alvarez. Weekend edition. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
So we need you to announce the fact that trucks and buses...
Now it's time to get back to the Hail Varsity Radio Show with Chris Schmidt and Mark Kraynak.
All right, that's it! You two guys leave me no choice. No television for a week. What?
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. A legend is retiring, and he's been a joy to have on the program for a number of years. Wisconsin Athletic Director and Coach Barry Alvaraz, standout Husker. Coach, congrats on what a wonderful career. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Chris.
Take me through the decision process here, Coach, to step away. And was it hard? Is it time? I mean, how are you feeling right now?
I feel great. You know, I was going to retire in January, and with COVID, I just didn't think that was the time to pass the baton and have a new person have the burden of trying to work through that. Chancellor asked if I would stay on and help us get through it. Hopefully we're in the tail end of it now, but I just felt like it was time. I'm 74 years old, and my wife's been trying to encourage me to do this for the last couple of years, so I just think it's time.
Barry Alvaraz with us. Coach, I want to get back to your career in a moment, but can you put into words for the audience, just from your position, what it's been like to try and navigate this pandemic as an athletic director?
Well, you know what, it was draining because, first and foremost, what we tried to do was keep the health and safety of our student athletes and coaches and our employees at the forefront, make decisions based on that, make medical decisions. And as we move forward, you get different information daily. You learn more and more about the virus. And so, you're trying to make decisions. You're trying to anticipate some things. And, it was really a draining process and a difficult process.
Were you able to, with your position and your experience dealing with something like this that no one's dealt with in this country for a century, were you able to calm some fears with the student athletes?
You know what? We try to be very open with them and their parents. We work through our coaches. We would have Zoom calls and informational sessions on testing, and as we got the information, how we were going to test, what we knew, precautions we were going to take. I thought we did a good job of communicating all the information we had, so that parents had answers and student athletes had answers.
Barry Alvaraz with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Coach is retiring here at the end of June. A marvelous run as athletic director at Wisconsin, Hall of Fame head coach. So, Coach, when did you know you wanted to make the jump and become an athletic director? And kind of take me through your thought process, if you can, in your career, in your football life, where you wanted to run a program from the administrative side, not just the coaching.
This is pretty well documented. I really admired Bob Devaney and what he did, and really tried to pattern my career after his. I can remember when Pat Richter interviewed me and talked about my vision forward, and I told him, I said, I want to do what Coach Devaney did. I want to turn that football program around. I want to sustain it. When I'm ready to step down from football, I want to take over the athletic department, take your job when you retire, and continue to build the athletic department. That was my vision all along. I joined the senior staff while I was coaching, and then as he retired, the then chancellor came to me and asked if we're in the process of building our suites and renovating the stadium. And we came right after 9/11, we came to a standstill. And he came to me and asked, he said, we're asking people for donations. They want to know, the direction of the athletic department, who's going to lead it. Would you take over? And, I had some questions for him, and, we were able to work it out. So I did both for a couple years, and then moved into the director spot.
How was it doing both? What was that like?
Well, that was a grind. It's hard enough during football season to manage football. You got to lean on a lot of people. I had a very good deputy, and Jamie Pollard was my deputy at the time. But all the decisions still ran through me, and it was difficult, but it was manageable.
What do you remember talking to Coach Devaney about when it comes to being an AD, reaching out to him with questions, with advice? I mean, Coach Devaney was such a mentor to so many.
Yeah, you know what? I really never talked to him about being the athletic director. I was coaching. Anytime, and I had a daughter that went to school. My oldest daughter went to school there. So when I went back, I'd go in and sit down and visit with him. And most of my discussion with him was about football and what was going on in football. I had him come out after that first Rose Bowl that we had. I wanted him to come out and speak to our high school coaches association and watch a little bit of our practice, spend a weekend with us, which he did and really appreciated. But I really never talked to him about being the athletic director decisions. He had passed, I think, by the time I took over as director. But I did, anytime I was close to him or in town, I'd go and sit down and visit with him, mainly about football.
Barry Alvaraz with us on Hail Varsity. And when it comes to your career, Coach Alvaraz, were there some twists and turns? I look at your ascension from Lexington, and before that at Lincoln Northeast, and then in Iowa, and then you get hired away to the University of Iowa, and then Notre Dame, and then you start your own show at Wisconsin. What do you remember about climbing the ladder? And were you able to be patient with the different stops you had in your career?
Well, I always knew where I wanted to end up. It's difficult to get an opportunity to get into college football. I can remember I left Lincoln. I was very happy in Lincoln, but at that time, the Lincoln public schools weren't elevate. They would not elevate an assistant coach, or hadn't at that time. So I knew if I wanted to move up in the business, I had to take a head coaching job. That's why I took the Lexington job. It was a great move. I really enjoyed my 2 years in Lexington. Had some great kids, some really good players. I thought I did not want to leave Lexington. I had most of those my better kids were all sophomores when I went there. A number of them started at that sophomore year. I think we ended up second in the state, and I think 4 or 5 of those guys ended up playing in Lincoln, and playing other places. The next year we were about the same. I thought I had the best team in the state coming back as a senior, and out of the clear blue, I get a call from a former Nebraskan, Roger Clough, who had been at Mason City for 2 years, saying that he was looking for. They're looking for a football coach. Gone through the interview process a couple times, couldn't find who they wanted. He said, "I've been following you. Would you be interested?" And I wasn't interested in leaving. And he said, I'll fly you and your wife out here. And my wife said, we don't have anything to do this weekend. Let's do it. And so we did. And they hadn't had much success. And we looked. She said, this is really a nice town. Hal, you know how to win. Let's do it. And so we ended up doing that. We moved across. We left Lexington in a U-Haul and a borrowed hay truck to move to Mason City. And our second year there, we were pretty good. And third year, we won a state championship, and that's the year Hayden Fry and Donnie Duncan came to Iowa and Iowa State. Both of them offered me a job, and I'd known Hayden, or known of Hayden, and felt I could really learn from him. And that was a hell of a staff that I joined there at Iowa. And I was really happy at Iowa. I was there 8 years and wasn't looking for anything, for another job when Lou Holtz called and actually recruited me. And after 1 year there, promoted me to from linebacker coach to defensive coordinator, and we win the national championship, win 25 of the next 26 games, and all of a sudden I'm a hot property. So that's how I ended up at Wisconsin.
Well, and when it came down to your path, you were always courted. I mean, folks recognized the talent, the ability, the success, and said, we got to have Coach Alvaraz be our next. And was there ever a time that Lincoln called you to come this way?
No.
No?
No, I never had an opportunity to go there. I had opportunities to go to a lot of places, including a few NFL teams, but again, I'd always go back. It was always flattering when somebody came after you, and a lot of really good jobs, some of the better jobs in the country. But, we'd go back, my wife and I, we didn't want to be coaching vagabonds.
Right.
We wanted to plant our roots someplace, raise our family someplace, and call someplace home. And, we would always, decide to stay right there.
Barry Alvaraz, a couple more minutes with us. Hail Varsity Radio. Incredible career, retiring here at the end of June as athletic director at Wisconsin. Coach, with the transition from coaching to the athletic department, you have the ability to, kind of go a certain direction, and it's being a CEO, with what you got to do from a fundraise. It's a chance to generate money. It's a chance to give back, obviously. How, and you're retiring, but with name, image, and likeness that's ongoing in the transfer portal, those are two big things that are going on with college football. How would you deal with that? How would you combat it to make it a good spot for everyone?
Yeah, first of all, I'm really concerned about the future of our business, and I've always been a proponent of doing whatever we can for the student athletes. I think some of the rules we've had, the NC2A rules we've had over the years, have been ridiculous rules to make rules. Used to be the rules on meals, all the different things. I think name, image, and likeness is the same thing. If a kid is talented enough and can use social media to generate money and be of value, they should be able to take advantage of that. Or if someone wants to use their image or use them to promote their business, they should be able to do that. I just don't want it to get to the point where you're using that as enticement or for recruiting purposes, and you take it to a new level where coaches go out or schools go out and drum up sponsors for athletes before they even bring them in to entice athletes, and then the lawsuits that are coming out where players want a percentage of income, etc. They forget most schools are losing money. Most athletic departments are losing money. I really think it still has to be based on education. And I tell our people all the time, I tell our administration, I never recruited a kid and guaranteed them that they would start or they'd play. I guaranteed them we'd support them to get an education. That's what they're coming there for. And that's, I believe that from the time I went to Nebraska. And so I don't want to get too far away from that. College athletics is not, never should be pay for play.
Transfer portal, I mean, that is, and we're looming on the NCAA passing the one-time transfer kind of free pass setup, and people benefit from transfers, and it doesn't always benefit the kid because it may not be easier, even though the grass looks a little bit greener somewhere else. I mean, how have you been able to cope with the transfer? I know Wisconsin's been pretty good about not losing kids, but other places are.
We're fortunate. We have a good place. People you couldn't run some of our guys out with a cattle prod. When you have a good place. Now, I put the onus on the coaches. You're recruiting a person, a student athlete. You get a chance to go into their home, see what kind of background they have. Do they have helicopter parents? Are they someone that's going to be spoiled? Someone you're going to have to de-recruit? And then I put the onus on the coaches to build a relationship with the student athletes so that they want to play hard and play for those coaches. And, I've said all along, I said in Big Ten meetings, if a student athlete doesn't want to be there, I don't want him there. Go ahead and transfer. Mm-hmm. But you've got to change. Now everybody's got to adjust, and you've got to have someone that's on top of not just your, overseeing juniors and seniors coming out of high school. You've got to have someone on top of the portal and see if there's something that fits you that you can go out and recruit or go out and sign. So you just have to adjust with the times. But I think it's fair for the student athletes if they see they have an opportunity to for a better experience. Then I don't have an issue with it. I really don't.
Winding down a few more minutes here. Barry Alvaraz with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Coach retiring here at the end of June. A long and super productive career as AD and head coach at Wisconsin. Coach, what are you most proud of as AD? I mean, what do you want to be remembered for? Well,
it goes back to football. Mm-hmm. When I went there, I think our budget was probably $14 million, the athletic department, and they were $2 million in debt. They're really, I think hockey was probably the only consistently good team at the time. So to build an athletic department, you have to fill the stadium. You have to have success in football so that you can fund at a high enough level the other sports that you have. In our case, we've got 23 other sports, and so the fact that we were able to have success in football, fill the stadium, and then help build the remainder of the athletic program, and then sustain it. The hard thing is to sustain it. And I think since '93, we have, to think of some of the schools out there and the brand names around the country. and at that point, Wisconsin had been to 6 bowls in the history of the school. And from that point, and our basketball team hadn't been to a tournament, NCAA tournament, since the 40s. And from that point on, we have more bowl appearances and NCAA basketball appearances than any school in the country. That talks about consistency and longevity, and that's pretty special. And so that's what makes me so proud is what we've been able to build and sustain.
Coach, how much golf are you going to play?
Well, I'm down in Florida right now. Not very good. My wife even beats me now occasionally. I'll play 2-3 times a week, but I'm not going. I have to find some other things to do because golf isn't as satisfying for me as it used to be.
Well, I think if you zoom out and do 4 or 5 times a week, maybe you start winning. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the one thing I won't do is practice, so you probably won't get any better unless you practice.
So you're no to the practice side. I like it. Barry Alvaraz with us. Coach, thanks so much. It's been so many great conversations. Take care.
All right. Have a great day, Chris. Bye.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Back into it, weekend edition, hour 2 at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Damon Barr. We bring in the managing editor for HailVarsity.com and magazine, author with John Cook. Dream Like a Champion. It's Saturday, and we say hi to Brandon Vogel at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, how was the Friday night? Anything fun?
No, not too much. It was pretty quiet. So, yeah, sorry, that's a terrible answer. Now that I think about it, I didn't do anything.
That is a terrible answer, but that's okay. That's okay because we had a terrible first hour. I had terrible takes. It's just a terrible.
I don't believe so.
I'm just kidding. I'm just trying to make Brandon feel better by his terrible answer.
There was broken glass when talking about the Nebraska offense.
That was
blaming his child.
It was a cereal bowl, by the way. That's what it was. In case anybody was wondering,
I believe
cereal bowl
you.
broke. Hey, before we jump into football, because there's a lot to get into, I just want to pick Brandon's brain about volleyball because I was there at the Final Four.
It's your fault.
Got to see some of the teams up close and personal. I don't want to make too much of it, Brandon, but the way Texas looked, I'm just like, Kentucky has no chance. I didn't think Wisconsin had any chance either. That was the first time in a while that I've seen Nebraska look almost outclassed, where
they look mortal.
They have no answer for this tech. And I don't want to make too much of it, but it almost reminded me of like the Tamarick Vanover Florida State years. And, when they were just so far ahead of everybody talent-wise, they're just like, you got to figure something out. And if you're going to try to compete with this group, has Texas reached that sort of level, or is it maybe just flash in the pan 1 year thing? Because look, they completely dismantled Wisconsin and, swept them in 3 games. Like, you're talking about the consensus number 1 team in America, and Texas just made them look silly. Like, is there something that Texas has discovered that Nebraska needs to respond to, or do you think it's a 1 year kind of aberration thing?
Well, I think Texas played really, really well in that match, and honestly, what they did to Wisconsin was more surprising to me than what happened to Nebraska. I was kind of cautiously optimistic about Nebraska's chances going into that, knowing that how healthy Lawrence Stivrins was going to be a big part of that, but Texas played well, and then they also, had a good approach. They really exposed, I think, some of Nebraska's weaknesses that we didn't get to see a ton of in a conference-only shortened season with Nebraska. And, I don't know if that's exactly what happened to Wisconsin as well, but as well as Texas played against Nebraska, I expected that to be kind of a knockdown, drag-out fight between the Badgers and the Longhorns, and they cruise. Yeah, they're super athletic. They're obviously an established program with a coaching staff that's been there for a long time. So it might just be, one of those kind of singular collections of talent for them. I mean, Texas is never going to fall too far, but I think watching them just tear through Nebraska and Wisconsin back-to-back, teams that were in the top 5 all year long. And I mean, Texas was in the top 5 even during that split fall season. It made you wonder if the fact that Nebraska and Wisconsin didn't get to play each other. This was the first team like that they had seen. I mean, Minnesota's good, Ohio State's good, but this was just a different level. And I was on the other side of it. Kentucky's been really, really good all year as well. But I agree with you. It's the way that Texas is playing and the run that they're on. It looks like it's going to be an uphill fight for the Wildcats.
Yeah. Texas looked unbeatable with what they did to Nebraska, and I'm like the most novice volleyball guy there is. But with how physical and athletic and powerful they were.
That's the word. That's the word. In person.
Yeah, answering.
The relentless amount of power that comes out at you.
And they always
it was just
answer.
like Wisconsin just wore out. You're just like, are you kidding me? They're doing that again? And they're in systems so often. They just look heads and tails better than Wisconsin and Nebraska. Like, it doesn't even – it's not even close in person, honestly. Like, there was no – even when Wisconsin came back and made it interesting, you felt like they had to – like, everything had to go perfect, and they had to expend so much energy to get there. And then Texas just – sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Novice volleyball take.
No, do it.
for my novice volleyball team.
No, what they did in Nebraska, I'm like, they're winning it, right? I mean, I have no audio proof, but that's what was going through my mind. I'm like, man, if they did that to Nebraska, no one's touching them. And even when Nebraska won, and this isn't Nebraska's fault, Vogues, but how many service errors? Like, Texas's serving sucked the set they lost to Nebraska. I mean, there were so many shots to the net where, bless Nebraska's heart, you'll take the points. Texas still has to execute, but when Nebraska was on the attack, Texas always had some sort of answer, and then they turn it into a point. So I just fast forward to that and said, and I didn't watch Texas against Wisconsin, but I'm like, saw the score the next day. I'm like, okay, they swept Wisconsin. I mean, that's really like, you want both to lose. If we're just being angry sports fan here, Wisconsin and Texas, right? But I'm like, man, Texas was looking too good to be defeated based on what they did to Nebraska.
Yeah, I kind of expected Kentucky to cruise past Washington. Washington had to go to 5 sets and really rally to even get there. And they were another team, of course, that only played in the spring and even had, I think, fewer matches coming in than Nebraska. So, yeah, it's just Texas looks like it has hit its stride. And there was a little bit of crisis for the Longhorns, too, because they got pushed late in the year by Rice, which everybody kind of, in the volleyball world was like, what is that? But, hey, it might be one of those deals where you got the wake-up call you needed to play at your peak at exactly the right time.
Brandon Vogel's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine managing editor at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. So, speaking of wake-up calls, what do you make of Greg Austin's thoughts this week about the offensive line and your general takeaway? It's one practice, it's one post-practice. Does it shade how you feel a week from today goes for the offense? Does it heighten what you need to see from the offense, or is it all just spring and it's just chopping wood at this point?
Yeah, I didn't put too much into it. I mean, I guess if you're to assign a winner and a loser for every practice, well, you'd have one every practice, right? I kind of read it as, I mean, I don't doubt that the defense got the better of it that day, but it's one of those things, where you have to show up for a Zoom meeting that you're not totally prepared for, offer a status update and be like, yeah, shipping was really off today, or whatever it may be. It's probably true for that day, but I'm not using that to alter my, I guess, long-term expectations for the offense, which, I'm having a hard time this offseason even knowing what my long-term expectations for the offense are. So, there's a lot of questions. I mean, the majority of the questions for Nebraska in 2021 are on that side. So I think seeing something from that group in the spring game would help a little bit, would help make for a more pleasant off season. But who knows? Even then, good or bad, you got to put that in the proper context as well. Of, hey, just one game, controlled circumstances. So it'll be good to get that long of a look at both sides of the ball, really, though, for Nebraska.
I wonder, Brandon, are we maybe too quick to dismiss the contributions of veteran offensive linemen? Because I think back, when I say we, I mean collectively, sort of the fan base, the Nebraska stakeholders, fans, media, whatever. You think back to 2018, Foster and Farmer leaving ended up being a much tougher thing to replace than I think most people gave it credit for. Now we're going into something similar where you lose Farniok and Hymas. And I think the knee-jerk reaction as well, you're going to upgrade there. Those guys, they're not high draft picks. Do you think Nebraska will feel their loss maybe more so than we're thinking that we will?
Yeah, probably. I think you'll notice it, or you have the potential to notice it the most early, because returning offensive line starts more so than just returning offensive linemen is a pretty good predictor of, an offense progressing or regressing. And Nebraska's overall returning production, when you factor in rushing yards, passing yards, and receiving yards as well, is a little over 50%, which is low. That is the type of returning production where you're in this gray area to / trending downward, where you'd say, well, most teams in this spot take at least a slight step back. I think there are good reasons to think that Nebraska maybe outweighs, kind of the historical trend there. But I think you're right. I think in 2019 is a really good example of you lost two guys who were maybe valued as much for what they provided leadership-wise as the actual play on the field. But just having those experienced guys matters a lot. Now, I think a lot of other people, can look at that offensive line and see the size and the athleticism and the type of players that Nebraska has brought in and be long-term bullish on that group. And I am. But it may get, there's going to be some kinks to work out in, I think, the first 4 or 5 games of the season. And that just comes with, hey, Turner Corcoran looks like he's going to be really, really good. But he's going to be, when he goes down to play Oklahoma, that's going to be the first time he's seen anything like that. And I know that they'll get a game in against Illinois, a fellow Big Ten team, which will help a little bit. But Oklahoma is just a different level. And you see that often in the Big Ten.
That's a great point. I'm bullish with you on this offensive line because of the youth, because of the season they've had right now of more development. Right, you're going to get better as a younger player, getting more snaps. I like the adjustment to practice that's been talked about, where you're going to correct on the field or air quote run it again, versus just kind of talking about it in film or in a meeting afterwards, right? They've got to be more disciplined with holding or false starts. And we got a little bit of a look-see as to, well, why the hell, if you practice so much, are there false starts and holdings? I mean, holdings are going to happen. I get it. But, you and I both know that it was just shoot self in foot and hit repeat quite a bit for Nebraska's offensive line, and they're better than that. They're really better than that. So I'm anxious to see this guard spot play out, and good for a guy like Sichterman, Vogues, that has been here. He's kept grinding. He's got that eye on the prize, and that's to win a starting spot. He's trying to fend off a guy like Banks, who's massive, and he's also been here a little while but hasn't had any starting time. You got a guy like Piper getting pushed, and then you have some depth behind your 2 tackles on top of Juergens, who's, been in this program a while. I really like what the offensive line can be with your veteran quarterback. Now, let's talk running back for a second.
Turn it down.
Let's talk quarterback.
Sorry.
You're good. I wasn't hearing anything. It's all right.
All right, good.
Except for your incredible parenting skills. I love that.
Turn it down. Quick on that. I hit mute.
It's all right.
No.
The running backs is where I was going.
In their defense, they're turning on old Husker games.
Oh, really?
So it's good.
Okay.
It's good, but it just got a little. I'm like, turn it down.
So are we going to hear CP, Christian Peter, like smashing like Christmas ornaments on his forehead? Are they the decade of excellence or whatever?
When I say old, I'm talking like Riley. Colleen.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Not our old.
No, because why is that so blurry? I'm like, there's this whole HD. Never mind.
Vogue's the running game. Can that pair successfully with this offensive line?
I think so, but there's a lot of moving parts there, and we're probably not, a week from today, probably not going to get a great feel for what the running back situation looks like even after that, not knowing who's available and who isn't. Looking at last year's numbers, I mean, the running game for Nebraska was strong, almost like any way you want to look at it in terms of big plays. Their explosive play rate was high. Their success rate was extraordinarily high. So, I mean, they've kind of got a high bar. And we saw last year that alone wasn't enough for Nebraska. Now, I think it still needs to be sort of their sharpest knife in the drawer. For Nebraska to get where it wants to go, it's going to get there through success on the ground. And it's a tough one to kind of handicap in terms of what I expect for 2021, just because of how much newness is there with the offensive line. But if you can, success on the ground as much as talent. I mean, obviously you want talent. A singular running back's a great thing to have. But that one, through coaching and instruction, like, you can be a really good running team through that alone. And is Nebraska getting there? Was last year something of a sign of that? Because I don't know if we came away from 2020 and be like, well, yeah, there was this fatal flaw and this fatal flaw and this one, but the running game was really good. I think the running game just kind of got eclipsed by a few of those other things. So I'm really interested to see where Nebraska goes from where it left off in 2020. And the thing about 2020 is that those are conference-only numbers. Like, if they had played a non-conference schedule, they probably would have been top 10 or maybe even top 5 in rushing success rate. And it's strange to think that those 3 games you'd normally open the year with can alter perception that much, but they probably would have. If Nebraska had been a top 10 rushing team, we'd be talking about it nonstop this offseason. They got close, and it just, due to the record and due to the way that they lost, we kind of lose sight of that. So I look at the run game as it left off in a really, really good place from 2020, actually. You don't want as much quarterback run as you had to use, but that remains another variable here. So where can they go? And it's just there's so many names to kind of kick around between running back and offensive line. It's hard for me, at least, to get a real good beat on it.
It's funny you bring that up because I think the perception is Brandon, despite the numbers that they were, to use a basketball term, almost like garbage yards, right? Because they're just sort of quarterback scramble outside a system, McCaffrey kind of doing whatever, or even Wandale playing tailback and he's now transferred. Adrian making something out of nothing. I think that's the perception. Do you think that's a good perception to have, an accurate perception, or do you think maybe people aren't giving Nebraska enough credit for the run success they had?
I think even when you remove that part of it, and you do have to, like, if you just want to boil down to, hey, when Nebraska lines up to hand the ball off, how well do they do? I think it still gets overlooked a little bit, but you're right. Like, the quarterback piece of this and its influence on those numbers that has to be accounted for. We've seen those games where Nebraska in the past hasn't had a traditional handoff run game. To go back to 2019 against Minnesota, they had really nothing. And it just Minnesota looked like vintage Nebraska, just ground them down and did whatever they wanted. You play Wisconsin that same season, and all of a sudden the run game can't be stopped against a defense that is annually in the top 10. So finding some consistency there, and I think part of the issue with that consistency is those games where they do have to go to the quarterback run, or maybe they dial it up a little bit more early. Is Nebraska in a spot where it can be like, we have this weapon, we have an Adrian Martinez and his ability when we want to use it, but we feel good enough about the other piece of it to where we don't. And, are they capable of putting up the same numbers as they have in the past? It might be a little bit less, but I still think they could be a top 25 rushing offense if Adrian Martinez is running it 2 or 3 fewer times a game.
That's my question. What's the pitch count, right? Because Adrian looks phenomenal. He looks way faster. He looks super shifty. And if he were to pull on a zone read and take off around the edge, that first play of his career where he went down the sideline against Colorado, this was a scramble, obviously, where he made a move and got outside contain. But, man, as good as he looks, I'd be running him a lot. They've already run him a lot in his career. But it's got to shift, doesn't it, to quality versus quantity? Just in the name of protection, Vogues.
Yeah, I think in both in terms of protecting him, which, when we look at, he's missed games every year. And you look at Nebraska's backup quarterback situation, and we'll see how that shakes out. It'll be interesting to get an extended look at both of those guys, too. But you get real young in a hurry there if that's the way you got to go. But also in terms of just protecting the football. I know you and I, Schmidt, talked about it a few weeks ago, but 27 career fumbles for Adrian Martinez. I think 17 lost. At this point, I don't know if that's something you can coach into him or coach around outside of just, hey, the fewer carries, the fewer opportunities there are for that to happen. And I mean, I understand there's still sacks which is a whole other thing in terms of quarterbacks, but yeah, protect Martinez, protect the football. You can do that with giving a greater share to the running backs.
Brandon Vogel with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Is the Oregon go fast offense, is that just a thing of the past? Like, has that approach or that desire to be like that just been completely abandoned? Is this going to be just an entirely new style of offense that Frost is trying to employ?
I think going fast for fast's sake, maybe waning. How fast Nebraska actually goes is in my mind, a matter of how much success they're having. So if these plays are hitting and they're consistently on schedule and staying ahead of the chains, I wouldn't be surprised to see them, dial it up. Maybe dial it up to an even greater degree than they have. They just haven't had the consistent kind of success. And even that feels like a little bit of a misnomer because their success rate's been really strong. So they have success, and then you get a tackle for loss, or you get a sack, or one of your bubble screens isn't caught and bounces out of bounds 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And those things just kill a tempo offense. And they kill you. They don't kill a tempo offense. They kill your ability to be able to go that way. It's really kind of like a Street Fighter flurry of punches type of deal where, hey, as long as you're moving forward, you can keep going as fast as you want. And Nebraska moves forward the majority of the time. It's just those negative plays that have really hurt them. So I think I look at Nebraska's tempo in 2021 as, and we all know what Greg Austin said, and certainly want to give that weight of, hey, let's slow down and see if we can help this at times. So I expect them to be selective, and the more success, the more consistent success they have, the faster they'll be able to go. I guess the best way to sum that up might be how good Nebraska's offense looks will probably tell you how fast they went at the end of things.
Brandon Vogel's with us. Vogues, have a good weekend. Real quick, what's coming up with Hail Varsity?
Yeah, we got the April issue out this week. It's a really good issue, so back to work on May and kind of deep into yearbook prep already for June. So we've got that. We'll have a baseball recap from the weekend. Got out softball for some photos last night, which is on site now. And we got a full slate prepping for the spring game, and then some volleyball review next week coming up on hailvarsity.com.
That is awesome. Vogues, have a great weekend. Thanks for the time today.
Thank you.
All right, there he is,
Thanks,
managing editor, Brandon Vogel, hailvarsity.com, and magazine at Brandon L. Vogel. I love talking offense, and I know it's topics that you're, as a Nebraska fan, you're probably just banging your head against the wall with because there's so much evidence of it being really, really good. It just comes down to the consistency. There's enough evidence and data that shows there's been success, but it's been the missteps that they're trying to eliminate and really focusing on Kraynak with the attention to detail and fundamentals, which are really two boring words, but it's necessary when you look at what's held them back. They've put up yards against Iowa. They've put up yards against Wisconsin. They've put up yards against Northwestern. They've done that a lot in their tenure here. It just kind of comes down to taking care of the damn football.
Yeah, and they've done it without, like, whenever you want to run the ball, your deep play action passing game is the ultimate compliment.
Right.
Right, like always. And that was non-existent too.
Sure.
And so you're just like, yeah, and those are fundamental things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like fundamental things to run. If you are going to have a run-heavy offense, your counter to that has to be mid to deep play action pass. It doesn't have to be, but like,
no, I mean, just
so complementary to what you're trying to do, and that was just non-existent. Well, and so
didn't get separation
like,
a lot of times, or you miss the pass.
Yeah, it just feels like one hand tied behind your back.
Yes.
often enough that you just hope that gets fixed, because there's some pieces. Look, we were talking about receivers earlier. I know we got to get to breaks. We got to get to Gary, but like, we didn't even bring up like Xavier Betts, who talent-wise might be 1A.
He's a specimen. Guy's incredible. And
Alante Brown, we haven't even mentioned.
Sure.
Right? It's just like, you have depth. You have options. Can you get them the ball?
Were you pleased with the photos you got last week?
Oh, with Omar Manning's calves?
Well, I didn't, dude. I'm not creepy. I sent you a picture of the wide receiver group.
All I saw was Omar Manning's calves and then a bunch of things around it. So, yeah, they were impressive.
Well, Sharpie was sitting next to me in the end zone. He's like, "What are you doing? Taking a picture for Kraynak?" No.
Yeah, you were. And it's okay. It's okay. It filled up half the frame, even though you were 100 yards away.
Well,
what does that tell you?
What
does that tell you?
Phenomenal photography.
Nebraska's
skills.
future rides on Omar Manning's calves.
There we go. Gary Sharp's with us next. It's Hail Varsity Weekend presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Now back with Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery with Chris Schmidt and Mark Kraynak.
Weekend edition. It's Hail Varsity presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Damon Barr. We welcome in the Iron Horse. It is Gary Sharp. Sharpie, good to spend some time with you. Let's go back to last Saturday. And what'd you think? What'd you like?
I like the idea of having an open practice. It's rare these days that we get to see a full practice, but it was nice to see guys that you had not seen before, what they look like. I'm not making any sweeping generalizations or takeaways or how it's going to change expectations. One thing that stands out right away, and people will see this next Saturday if you haven't already seen it, is physically Nebraska looks entirely different. Nebraska looks like a Big Ten team, whether it be their linemen, defensive backs, wide receivers, outside of Omar Manning. They look like a Big Ten team. But I think it was important for fans to see, media to see, in a structure like that there is no downtime, and they've got everything structured out in all the different periods. So it was good to see, and it was good to see Omar Manning in uniform. Disappointing not to see the key running backs that were dressed. But I think we saw enough that quenched the thirst of football. And the most important day probably of spring camp to me was this past Wednesday when they had their last major scrimmage, because next Saturday is for the fans. They just want to see how guys react in front of fans and go out there and have a lot of fun. But I liked it last week, and I hope they continue that down the road. I doubt they'll do it in the fall for the general public, but I hope that becomes a spring thing.
Is Jacquez Yant, or is it Yant? I've heard him pronounce both. Yant. Let's go with Yant. Is he more like Jay Sims, where, hey, walk on that's actually going to get some playing time and will contribute? Or more like Brian Knuckles, guy that'll be awesome in the spring game, but just won't ever play?
Take a drink. We have a Brian Knuckles mentioned this morning.
You know what, though? That's by the way, Brian Knuckles, boy, we don't have enough time to tell stories about Brian Knuckles at Nebraska. That's a fair question that I think we all kind of ask, because he's noticeable. First of all, he's a running back that wears 0, and he's a big dude. He's 6'2". They list him at 225. Come on, man. Who are we kidding? He's about 240. He's a big guy that you can actually hear when he runs. He rumbles. But, and it's, I don't want to go all in, but I'm very intrigued because, the reason he ended up in Nebraska is, SEC schools kind of waited on him, and he had the Travis Fisher connection, and so he saw Nebraska as the place that he could end up, and he has taken advantage of his opportunity. So I'll be curious to see where he is in the pecking order when they get around to the fall. Is he going to be one of those guys that is in the top 3, or when you've got the full complement of running backs back, does he slip back? But that's the whole thing about spring. People that are off the radar, you need to grab the attention of the coaches by the way that you perform. And I think he's done enough that keeps you intrigued. But I always am fearful of somebody that gets a lot of love during the spring, because there's always one of those players that everybody talks about in the spring that you have no idea if they're still on the roster when the fall comes around, because you never see him again.
Sharpie, Yance grabbed our attention because of his side and his physical gifts and his story. about, finding a way to get eligible and then making it happen for him. So he's been very locked in, doing what he needs to do, and I really like, kind of the light that Becton and Coach Fisher have shed on Yan's story. That said, we have not seen Morrison. Irvin was out. Tompkins looked good, but again, limited. There was not much contact. And you've got Scott, plus you got Ramir. So the attention is great for Yant. Keep on it, dude. Good for you. But my attention's also to the guys that weren't going or haven't gone. Are you concerned with the running back situation and specifically this developmental time right now in the spring that you didn't have a year ago that clearly affected your options last fall at running back?
Well, Irvin was back on Wednesday.
Good.
And I think they just did a little load management with him on Saturday. We haven't seen Morrison. He's a wild card. I'm very disappointed to not see Ramir Johnson out there. But it's such a confusing running back room, guys, because on Saturday, when we were able to watch, Ronald Tompkins was running back 1, and Ronald Tompkins looked really good. His body is different. Even Marvin Scott's body is different, who is like running back 2. But Tompkins looked really, really good, better than at times you saw him last year. And then Marvin Scott, had a nice little burst. It's a very confusing room that Ryan Held's got some tough decisions to make on who comes after Gabe Irvin, what's the health status of Marquise Stepp, and then who is third, who is fourth. Do they have a running back that's going to carry the ball 20 times a game? And do they have a running back that is going to say, man, I just don't like where I am on the depth chart, I'm going to move on? There's a lot of, and we've said this from the start, there's a lot of intriguing pieces at running back, but how are they all going to fit? And who's going to be the one to first carry the football? Those are decisions that I don't think will be wrapped up on Saturday, but it's going to be tough to go through the offseason with a little bit of uncertainty about, okay, who's the proven commodity?
All right, takeaways just from reading, because I was not there. I had youth baseball to attend to last Saturday. But at the quarterback position, what I'm told, from what I can gather, Adrian Martinez to clear number 1. Smothers needs to work on his delivery. Harburg has a world of talent. Holy crap. Is that sort of your takeaway?
Well, so this is the year of Adrian. You can look around the field last Saturday, and Schmidt and I were sitting next to each other, and I might have said this to you. They look like a Big Ten team. Okay, that's an intriguing piece. Cam Taylor-Britt is the best player in the program. Mm-hmm. Defense looks pretty solid. And then your attention focused back to the guy wearing a green jersey, number 2, and it's the year of Adrian. Adrian looked good. I need Adrian to be great, I think. I don't need him just to be good. And I also need him to walk around in bubble wrap because behind him, I think, is a great mystery. Let's go with Logan Smothers. I think Logan Smothers definitely has the speed. It's a lot of straight line speed. You don't normally run in a straight line in football, but when he takes off, he can get to a spot pretty quick. I worry about his throwing the football. That needs some work. Whether it be the deep ball is really the one that I think he struggled with. The underneath passing game, he can be fine, but they've got to work a little bit on his mechanics. Harburg is quite the guy that you go, man, he's got a big boy arm. He's 6'5". There's something there. But, boy, I don't want to see him in a football game for a couple of years. But Harburg, I was a little suspect on Harburg. Seeing him on Saturday spin the ball a little bit, I think there is something there to work with. Now, if, in my opinion, watching the quarterbacks, if Nebraska had to, let's say Martinez is out for a series or, has to step aside for a game and you're playing this weekend, Matt Masker might actually be your number 2. And that's not a knock on Matt Masker. That's a guy that knows the offense pretty well. And he looks like a solid quarterback. They've developed him a little bit. He's the gap between Martinez and the rest of the quarterbacks, guys, is pretty large. Yep. But if I was going number 2, it would be Masker. But I'm concerned about the backup quarterback spot at Nebraska. There is no doubt about that.
And it just, and Sharpie, you're right on, and it just kind of comes down to, all right, readiness and what can you go produce. And with Harburg, God, he's got the physical gifts like you touched on. Where's he at? Comfort level? What can you do with your offense based on his short time here. You flip it around. Logan's been here a while, and he's a gamer, and that's the best way to describe him. But you're right about the limitations throwing the football. And that also, okay, on one hand, you have limitations because of inexperience and you're new to the program with Harburg. On the other side, and it's just going to take time. On the other side, how much better physically can you get? Are you able to do what they want you to do or hope you can do throwing the football in this offense if you're Logan? What's your ceiling with that? You may know what to do. You may be a tremendous athlete, but are you going to be able to handle the play action and get it downfield? I mean, so you're missing a piece, so to speak, with each guy right now.
Well, and it's also a little bit startling to see only 4 guys at quarterback.
Yes.
They've got some walk-ons coming in the fall, and the discussion will be: do you dip into the portal and grab somebody or somebody in junior college? I think the thing you have to consider is how comfortable does this staff feel with their backups to Adrian, and do they feel like there's a quarterback that is out there that would be able to come in and know the system pretty well, and also be comfortable with the fact that, you're probably not going to be the starter this year, but you have a chance to compete for the backup. But I think I would also look for a younger guy than an older guy that maybe gave you a couple of years. But I'm at the beginning of camp, I think we talked about it, and I said, I think they'll go and get a quarterback in the offseason. I'm not so slam dunk that they will, because I think there's a lot about the trust factor and not having to go through a big learning curve in this offense to get somebody up to speed, instead relying on, okay, we got 3 guys that have now gone through spring. We know what they can do. Let's work on them to get them ready to come into a football game if need be.
I asked Brandon about this too, Gary, but if you flash back to 19, after Farmer and Foster moved on, you're sort of like, Nebraska's going to upgrade at that position. It just seemed like people dismissed their contributions and were ready to move on and thought there would be an upgrade. Are we in danger of doing the same thing here with Farniok and Hymas, where folks are like, let's, Riley recruits, they're finally gone now, and, Frost recruits are going to be in there, and Nebraska will upgrade. Do you think maybe we're dismissing their contributions and Nebraska stands to maybe take a step back?
Well, I wouldn't say a step back. I don't think you should dismiss the contributions of both of those guys, because one guy started over 40 games for you. Another one started plenty of games. I think what Hymas stepping aside before the Rutgers game gave Turner Corcoran a great opportunity, and he took advantage of it. Now, he's still learning a little bit, but there's definitely the physical tools that are there that I think you can sit here today and not be concerned about the tackles. And that's a nice thing to have with this offense is, man, don't have to worry about the guy that's protecting my quarterback or the guy on the other side. I think Nebraska will be okay on the offensive line. I think there is enough experience. A lot of those guys have played a lot of football, except for Turner Corcoran. And I think they're going to be okay. The thing that I wonder about with this offensive line is, will they be a better pass pro unit or will they be able to run block? Because if you think about the passing game, and it is upgraded in terms of the talent. Nebraska's deeper at wide receiver than they've been, and they've got different kind of wide receivers that can do a multitude of things. But it's going to come back to not, hey, can Adrian complete a deep ball? It's going to come back to, can the offensive line block for 5 to 7 seconds? So they might need to be better in pass pro than running, which, you got to wait and see. I'll tell you another development about the offensive line this spring. Somebody we have not heard anything about, and even watching on Saturday, Cam Jurgens snapping the football. How refreshing is that? Now, you hope that continues into the fall, but that hasn't come up at all in the spring. So knock on wood, that still remains the case, because as we know, and he looked the part, when Cam doesn't have snapping issues and can just play football as a center, he's pretty good. He gets to the second level in his blocking really, really well. But everybody comes back to the snapping issues. I haven't heard anything this spring. I think that's a good sign. I also think, just reading into Greg Austin, I think Greg Austin likes what he's developing in his first 5, and that he's starting to develop another 3, 4 behind them. But I think he also likes the fact that he's got a little bit of competition at the guard spots, including the one that Banks and Sichterman are going at it. And I think Matt Sichterman is a good story about perseverance, hanging in there when it had been easy for him to take off.
Gary Sharp's with us, the Iron Horse, Hail Varsity Radio. Sharpie, before we step away, a thought here. Kind of the story nationally was what's being considered here about the playoff. Do you go to 6? Do you go to 16? Before we part, I want to get your take here. I know I still have 5 years left on the original CFP deal, but do you think the number they settle in at here in a couple of years is 8, is 6? I know it's ongoing discussions.
Well, hey, you guys know those semifinal games, they're tight, right? So let's get more teams in the playoff. How many times do we argue about, man, that 5th team, they should have been in there as well. That 6th team. Very rarely. I'm a 4 person. I know they're going to do it out of fairness to expand, but my God, to go from 4 to 16, I could see from 4 to 6. But what are we doing here? Isn't our goal to determine the best team, not just add teams? Very rarely are we having great semifinal matchups, and very rarely do we have closeness between the 4th and 5th team, let alone the 4th and the 8th team. I like where they're at 4, but I know how the world works. Money talks, and there's a lot of money to expand, and there's a lot of those conferences that are chirping saying, hey, how come we can't get an automatic qualifier? But what will happen, I think, be real curious to see with the playoff and the talk of expansion. Guys, we're about 10 years, 11 years from the last time we had expansion in college athletics with conferences. TV contracts are coming up. There's this big talk of going to just super conferences across the country, the 65 breaking apart. You got name, image, likeness. Get ready. Who knows what's going to happen? All of this stuff is coming to a head, and college football in 5 years may not look anything like what it looks like right now.
No, you're right on. Three semis. That's Clemson and Ohio State, both of those, and Bama, Ohio State. Those have been the only 3 semis really worth a damn. So you're right on with that. Gary, have a good weekend. We'll see you next Saturday, bud. Thanks again.
Hey, thanks, guys.
All right, there he is, Gary Sharp with us on Hail Varsity Radio. So love catching up with him. Kraynak, you're an Air Jordan guy, aren't you?
I mean, I had some back in the day.
Right.
I did. Long time ago.
This is
I
really,
wish I still had them.
Yeah, well, my brother has my pair from the mid-'80s, like the original Air Jordans.
Getting rich off you, too.
Well, he might be. Today going on out on Westo, the Kinetic Sports Complex is the going to be the Capital City Expo 2021, which is really awesome. And my brother's a part of this, and we're working on getting Andrew Hill on, but that thing gets going today, and it's really cool. It's sneakers, it's trading cards, it's custom clothes, it's exclusive gear, and we welcome on Andrew Hill. Andrew, thanks for jumping on here with Hail Varsity at ESPN Lincoln. Give us kind of a broad brush, if you can, of the Capital City Expo today out at Kinetic here. What can folks check out?
Hey, thanks for having me. So today we've got the Cap City Expo over here at Kinetic Sports Complex on West O Street. It's early admission starts at 11. General admission starts at 12, and we're going till 6 o'clock. We've got everything from exclusive shoes, vintage gear, old 80s vintage tees, just things you can't find, People want to come and find it all in one place, so made it happen.
That is awesome. Andrew Hill is with us, and the Capital City Hype presenting Cap City Expo. So what kind of excites you, man? What's like the coolest or most vintage pair of Jordans you've searched out or that may be on display today? Because I know there's a huge community of vintage shoe fans and collectors.
So today we will have a vendor, shout out Schmeekers. He's bringing out his 1985 Jordan 1s. Now, that is the first pair I've ever seen of the 85 release, the original OG high. Those are just, so clean. Unfortunately, they're not for sale, but only for displays from what I hear. But who knows? Maybe the right price will buy them.
Man, and of course, if there's Yeezy fans, and also like this whole thing that went down with Kobe and Nike and Vanessa Bryant, man, like Kobe's have always been hot, but they're about to get even more rare, it sounds like.
Oh, man. So you've heard of Kanye West with his Yeezys.
Yeah.
Well, he was originally with Nike. Well, when he left Nike and went to Adidas, those Nike Yeezys skyrocketed.
Okay.
So you could kind of see the same thing coming with the Kobe's. I have a couple Kobe's. I actually just took them off my page, and I'm holding them maybe for a year. They're gonna go up, man. They're gonna go up. I can't wait to see what they bring.
Andrew Hill is with us, Capital City Hype, the Capital City Expo going on out at Kinetic Sports Complex. That's out on West O. You've been there for some basketball tournaments, probably early admission at 11, general admission noon to 6 today. And if you like vintage clothes or you want to see some sneakers, Kraynak, what year did you rock Air Jordans? Did he disappear? I don't know.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
Here we are.
Yeah. Were you on mute? No. What year did you get the Jordans?
6th grade, 7th grade?
Right, and we're a little older. So, but point is think if you still had them, right?
I know. I wish I did. They were pretty small, though. I had small feet. I don't know if that makes a difference. At the time.
Actually, you'd be surprised. The smaller pairs actually go for more. I don't know. Something about between sizes 7 and 9. Or it's called the money pairs.
That's good. Well, and Andrew, real quick, if folks want to find out more about what you do, how do they get a hold of you?
You can follow me on Instagram at Capital City Hype. You can also check out my website, capitalcityhype.com. I'll be updating inventory after today's events. And we also having a 3-point contest today at 2 p.m.
Nice.
It's a $20 buy-in, winner takes all. So,
Kraynak, how's your 3-point game?
I haven't played basketball since high school. I'd shoot around a bit, but I was more of a wrestler.
Oh, there we go. Andrew, thanks for the time and good luck today with the Capital City Expo, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. There you go. Kraynak, you bald.
I mean, are you talking right or left-handed? What are you?
I'm saying I got your 20 if you drive down for this 3-point contest today.
I need. Is there time to build up my cardio?
Well, you just catch and shoot. You're good.
No, but you rise a little bit. It's a little harder than it looks. I think by the time you make your way to the top of the key, you better have something in the tank, to continue around.
That's code for we're both in our early to mid 40s and we sweat walking. So
I worry.
Damon says leave, but check that out. You want to see some cool Jordans or Yeezys, or you got a shoe fan in the family, or you want some throwback gear, check it out. And my brother and his friend Andrew Hill putting this on, so it's pretty awesome. All right, we'll be back at you next Saturday, likely a rail yard destination as we get things kicked off for the spring game. For the weekend edition. Back at you Monday to talk some NFL draft on Hail Varsity. Kraynak, be good, buddy.
You as well, sir.